If you look at the debt clock in Times Square, or study the official numbers released by the United States Treasury, you are faced with a figure so large it stops feeling real. The number has already blown past $35 trillion and is accelerating relentlessly toward $38 trillion. It ticks upward every second, faster than any taxpayer can comprehend. To understand its scale, imagine stacking 38 trillion $1 bills on top of each other. That stack would not merely reach the moon, it would shoot far beyond it, stretching deep into space. And yet, this unimaginable number represents real obligations, real promises, and real consequences. For decades, political leaders and mainstream economists treated this number like background noise. They reassured the public that deficits didn't matter. They argued the debt was harmless because we owe it to ourselves. As long as the economy kept growing, they claimed the debt would remain manageable. The national debt became an abstract statistic, a frightening headline, but one with no immediate impact on daily life. Like a high score in a video game, impressive, alarming, but disconnected from reality. But in 2024, the illusion broke. We have entered a new fiscal era, one where the debt is no longer theoretical. It is no longer passive. It has become an active force, a predator, consuming the federal budget from the inside out. For the first time in U.S. history, the federal government is spending more on interest payments than it spends on national defense. Let that sink in. America now allocates more money to paying bondholders for past borrowing than it does to maintaining the most powerful military on earth. Interest costs have surpassed spending on Medicaid. The annual interest bill is rapidly approaching $1 trillion, and it is growing faster than any other line item in the budget. This is not just unsustainable, it is structurally dangerous. This triggers a phenomenon economists call the debt spiral. In a normal household, excessive debt forces discipline. You cut spending, you cancel subscriptions, you stop luxuries. But a government does not function like a household. A massive portion of U.S. government spending is mandatory. Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits. These are legal and political promises made to an aging population. They cannot be cut without triggering social unrest and political collapse, so spending cannot meaningfully decline. Instead, to pay interest on existing debt, the government must issue new debt. It borrows again just to stay current. This increases the total debt, which increases future interest costs, which then requires even more borrowing. This is not linear, it is exponential. The system feeds on itself. And the terrifying truth is this: there is no clean exit from this trap. Historically, there are only 3 ways a nation can reduce a debt burden of this magnitude. And in modern America, 2 of them are politically impossible. The first option is austerity. This means massive tax hikes and brutal spending cuts. To balance the budget, income taxes would need to be doubled, or entire federal programs, including the military, would need to be slashed. Any politician proposing a 30% cut to Social Security commits instant political suicide. Any president proposing 70% marginal tax rates would be voted out in a landslide. The U.S. economy is deeply addicted to government spending. Removing it abruptly would trigger a depression worse than 2008. Austerity is not happening. The second option is default. The government could simply refuse to pay. Countries like Argentina and Russia have done this before, but the United States is different. The entire global financial system is built on the assumption that U.S. Treasury bonds are risk-free. They sit at the foundation of banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and international trade. If the U.S. defaults, the global banking system collapses overnight. Credit freezes, trade stops, markets implode. It would be financial nuclear war. Explicit default is unthinkable. That leaves only one remaining option. The third path, The one chosen by every empire in history is the soft default. You don't refuse to pay your debt. You pay it back in full. But you pay it back in money that is worth far less than when you borrowed it. You inflate the difference away. This is not a theory. It is official policy, just never stated openly. The strategy is called financial repression. The goal is simple: keep interest rates below the true rate of inflation. When inflation exceeds interest, the real value of debt shrinks year after year. If the government owes $30 trillion and inflation runs at 5%, the real burden of that debt falls by $1.5 trillion in a single year without raising taxes or cutting spending. Bondholders are paid, but their money buys less food, less housing, and less security. This erosion is hidden behind phrases like temporary inflation or supply disruptions, but the loss is permanent. We are now living through a historic shift known as fiscal dominance. For decades, the Federal Reserve controlled policy. It raised rates to fight inflation, even if it caused recessions. Today, the Treasury is in charge. The debt is so large that the Fed can no longer raise rates high enough to truly kill inflation. If rates return to 1980s levels near 10%, interest on $38 trillion would exceed $3.8 trillion annually, more than total U.S. tax revenue. The government would collapse. So the Fed is forced to tolerate inflation. It must suppress rates. It must monetize debt. Central bank independence is fading. The money printer is now permanently fused to the federal budget. This is not a crash. It is a slow burn. The debt will rise to $40 trillion, then $50 trillion. But the purchasing power of the dollar will continue to fall. The government is betting it can inflate away the debt faster than markets lose confidence. Print too slowly and the debt overwhelms the system. Print too fast and inflation spirals out of control. The target is sustained inflation to 4% to 5% for a decade. At 5% inflation, your savings lose half their value in 14 years. That is not a side effect. That is the mechanism. This is how the debt disappears, not from government balance sheets, but from your future.